Well, this week, the East Coast, it's been awash, hasn't it? And our third largest city, Brisbane, is in full repair mode. Some parts still underwater, all because of this flooding yet again. You know, southeast Queensland and Brisbane had over 100 hours of continuous, relentless rain. And I remember talking about it this time last week on this program. Parts of our biggest city, Sydney, countless other smaller yet very proud and historic places between Maryborough, Queensland and Victoria also displaced, despairing this deja vu of floods. This week, in a pre-federal budget leak, Treasurer Josh Frydenberg announced more money for nation-building infrastructure. Some, we're told, will be funds focused on fixing up all of this flooding catastrophe. Well, it's good to offer hope, Treasurer. In fact, there's no shortage of federal taxpayer funds, it seems, when it comes to disaster repair. However, and here is the problem, any spend on infrastructure is dependent on state governments agreeing to the project. And in Queensland, this also means union agreement. Plus, there's no direct funding for disasters to those afflicted. The states, you see, take the funds, they clip the ticket, handling costs, before it lands anywhere in the disaster zone. You just can't believe it. State governments take the money to manage the misery, but they never actually do anything about mitigating the real problems behind those miseries. State governments seem to have an abundance of processes, green tape, demands. For example, Gympie and Maryborough, Queensland, flooded yet again by the Mary River, reaching heights and depths comparable to floods from 130 years ago. So they've seen them before. And the weather event, well, it wasn't climate change, it was just weather. And in the case of the Mary River, there was a plan to mitigate and possibly even prevent flooding, while also capturing water for southeast Queensland. But it was stopped by Green Left activists, pressuring a Green Left Labor government at both state and federal levels. You see, during the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd years, Peter Garrett stopped the proposed Traveston Dam on the Mary River, which is a travesty. In Sydney, the mighty Warragamba Dam, Sydney's main water supply for 60 years now, has been mooted for a higher dam wall, all designed to capture more for water supply, but also to mitigate flooding down the Nepean and Hawkesbury River Valley. The Greens and Labor, well, they've railed against this too. Apparently there's freckle-faced geckos everywhere that need to be saved. You know, between these two examples, the flooded remains reflect the same folly of Green Labor. From the Wolfdean Dam in southeast Queensland, that's been talked about for years, but it was stopped 30 years ago by the Rudd-inflicted Goss government. And the failure to develop mitigation strategies for the Bremer and the Lockyer River systems to the west of Brisbane, they flow through Ipswich and into Brisbane. It happened in 2011, and it's happened in this past week. There's been failure to plan to dam the mighty Clarence, the Richmond, the Tweed, the Manor, you name it, all to manage supply and mitigate floods. All of this infrastructure has been left undone because of Green and Labor militants, and many of whom are right now employed by you in powerful decision-making roles in the state bureaucracy. That's right, that's where they are. Even the removal of the debris from these flood zones has been stymied by green tape. You know, there's no approval allowed for new landfills. You know, dig a hole, bury the rubbish, that sort of stuff, because state-based bureaucratic delays have been triggered by the onerous use of the federal environment laws. This means landfills are a no-no, and waste, well, we tax waste. The Environmental Protection Biodiversity Conservation Act, it's a real piece of work. It was enacted after we signed some United Nations treaty, and the Federal Act, it's the weapon of choice for state departments dominated by green activists to stop dams, quarries, landfills, the pre-fire season burning of forests, the development of road, rail, port and other nation-building infrastructure. And we're suffering these floods all up and down the East Coast, not because of climate change, even though the Queensland Premier has said it's climate change, you know. It's actually because of deliberate green inertia. We're being denied economic doing. We're not just planning. And it's all because of these militant Greens, the Labor Party, the left unions. These international agenda laws suit people in the East River, New York, but don't suit people in the Tweed River in northern New South Wales. Coal-fired power, water projects, a whole lot more. All because of delays or denial from state governments and their militant green bureaucrats. They're over-processing every idea, using this federal EPBC, frankly, to kill our nation. I welcome the commitment from the Morrison government for more infrastructure spending. But nothing will happen unless we rid ourselves of the laws which are worse than just preventing progress. These woke, internationalist green laws, they're creating misery. They're killing Australians, 5 in New South Wales, 10 in Queensland through this flood event. They've weakened our national sovereignty. Keen to know what you think. #Hardgrave. If you want to send a tweet, you can also write me directly, gary.hardgrave@skynews.com.au.